The first principle is that the patient should not consume cigarettes, alcohol, or even heavy food and coffee before we take their blood pressure. Why? Because it falsely raises the blood pressure. Why? Because it causes the activation of the neural and hormonal system, and the activation of the neural and hormonal system leads to an increase in blood pressure. How many minutes before should this not be done? Yeah, half an hour before. Yeah. The patient who comes in for us to take their blood pressure should be in a rest and relaxation phase 5 minutes prior, meaning the patient should come, let their body calm down, and then we take their blood pressure. Not when, for example, the patient has just arrived and climbed the stairs. And you sit on the chair and say, "Come, let me take all the pressure." Because in that situation, the blood pressure will definitely be higher than normal and higher than the level the patient actually has. So, what should we do? Well, the patient should be calm, the patient should be relaxed, and the patient should not be stressed, both physically and mentally. That is, a patient who is stressed or preoccupied will also experience an increase in blood pressure because it activates the neurohormonal system, which can falsely raise the pressure by 10 to 15 millimeters of mercury. The patient should have an empty bladder, meaning their urinary bladder should be empty. The sensation of needing to urinate and having a full bladder can increase the pressure by up to 300 millimeters of mercury. Neither the patient nor we should talk during the procedure, as talking can falsely raise the pressure. Therefore, it shouldn't be that while we are measuring the pressure, we ask them questions like, "What medication are you taking?" Or, "Have you had a history of heart attack or not?" Just talking can increase blood pressure by up to 10 millimeters of mercury, so talking is also prohibited. The patient's clothing should be appropriate, everyone. The patient should not wear tight clothing or have a tightly worn belt, or wear those corsets that some women use. These themselves, due to the pressure they exert on the abdomen and chest, increase blood pressure. A question: can we measure the patient's blood pressure over clothing or not? The fundamental and standard principle is that we should measure blood pressure on a bare arm, meaning there should be no obstruction on the arm between the patient and our blood pressure cuff. But if the patient's clothing is thin, like a single layer, or for example, some women wear sleeves, those are not obstacles. But what is the condition? The condition is that the brachial artery pulse can be accurately detected even under the clothing. Is this logical? Should we lift the sleeve and go up? Rolling up the clothing upwards causes additional pressure on the upper part of the brachial artery, and the pressure we measure may not be accurate. Now, the patient's position should be with a straight back. What does that mean? It means the patient should fully lean their back against the chair. When the patient leans forward for you to take their pressure, it might falsely increase the pressure because the pressure in the abdomen and chest rises. What about the patient's legs, Mai? Can the patient cross their legs, Mai? They should be uncrossed, Mai. Why? What's wrong with crossing their legs, doctor? Because in fact it can affect our arterial system, increasing the afterload. When the afterload increases, blood pressure is falsely measured higher in the arms. From which arm should we take the patient's blood pressure? Because we want to measure the doctor's pressure. Right arm and left arm. The first time, it's standard to take the measurement simultaneously from both the right arm and the left arm. And then in subsequent stages, we use the arm with the higher blood pressure as the standard. Why? Could the arms differ from each other? How much is normal? So the left and right arms can have a difference of up to 10 millimeters of mercury, therefore. We take measurements from both arms and use the one with the higher reading as the standard for in future measurements. Patients have heard that the arm or wrist should be at heart level when taking blood pressure, so they raise their arm like this. Is this correct or not? This is referred to as an unsupported arm. What does that mean? It means you are actually using your arm and shoulder muscles to keep your arm steady. And this muscle contraction can cause the blood pressure reading to be falsely elevated. The next principle is that our arm should be at heart level. Who is this important for? For hospitalized patients, those lying in bed. Hey, sometimes the bed might be completely supine, and if you raise their hand of hobo, then the blood pressure will show higher or lower. It will show lower, meaning we practically underestimate the blood pressure. For every 2 centimeters that your hand is above heart level, the blood pressure is measured 2 millimeters of mercury lower. What if the patient's hand is hanging down when you take their blood pressure? The same rule applies, meaning for every 2 centimeters that the patient's arm is below heart level, the blood pressure is overestimated by 2 millimeters of mercury. How should the elbow position be? For example, is what you did now good, doctor? It should have a 45-degree angle. This angle is excellent now. It should have a 45-degree angle between the upper arm and forearm. Therefore, if it is completely at 0 degrees or completely straight, this is not recommended. Tell me, is this cuff suitable or not? There is a rule called the 840 rule. What does 840 say? It says the cuff you use to measure blood pressure should cover 80% of the arm's circumference and 40% of the arm's width. But an important point here is that the cuff refers not to the fabric itself, but to the bladder inside it. You know that part? No, look, it has this fabric-like appearance, and then we have a bladder, which is a pouch or a rubber bag, that inflates with the air we send into it. Yeah, it should cover 80% of the arm's circumference, and its width should be 40%. It should actually cover the width of the arm. How is the cuff's location determined? Well done. 2 centimeters above the elbow crease. We place the cuff. To position the cuff, the first thing we do is detect the brachial artery pulse. Once we detect the brachial artery pulse, we move 2 centimeters above the elbow crease and secure the cuff. This is the appropriate location. The second point to pay attention to is the tubing. The tubing used to inflate the cuff must be positioned at the front. This is particularly important for digital blood pressure monitors. Why? The mechanism of digital sphygmomanometers is based on oscillation or vibrations of the brachial artery, meaning it detects the vibrations of the brachial artery and measures the pressure. If it is placed slightly more lateral or medial, since it is not positioned on the brachial artery, the pressure it measures for you is not accurate. The next consideration is the tightness of the sphygmomanometer cuff. Do we have a standard for how tight it should be? This is something you might not know, guys. The rule is that we should fasten the sphygmomanometer cuff in such a way that the tip of the finger, meaning the tips of our 2 middle fingers, can fit into the cuff. It shouldn't be so tight that our fingers can't fit in, nor so loose that our entire finger goes inside. Now, what happens if we fasten it too tightly? What happens if we fasten it too loosely? If we fasten it too tightly, guys, the pressure will be falsely overestimated. If we fasten it too loosely, it will be underestimated. Right? Now, the numerical difference might be small, but we are learning the standard here. Additionally, if you fasten the sphygmomanometer cuff too tightly from the start, it can cause pain and discomfort, especially for elderly individuals. If it activates the system, it can falsely elevate the pressure. Where do you place the stethoscope, Ms. Begier? On the brachial, yes, place it well. Look carefully, everyone. What Ms. Begier has done is very precise. For taking measurements, meaning placing the stethoscope or the medical earpiece, exactly, it must be precisely on the brachial artery. A point that many colleagues might mistakenly do is placing the earpiece under the cuff, meaning they do this. They don't want to hold it anymore. What problem does this create? It causes the pressure to concentrate at one point, and this results in the systolic number you obtain not being accurate. Okay? Additionally, it leads to the diastolic blood pressure being underestimated when you deflate the cuff, meaning you see the patient's blood pressure decreasing as you deflate the cuff. For example, as you approach 0, you still hear the blood pressure and the Korotkov sounds. Now, if you want to increase the pressure, how much do you increase it? How much do you inflate? To the extent that it is 20 millimeters of mercury more than where the sound stops, we must definitely have one hand on the patient's radial pulse. The standard is that you inflate the cuff to a level that is 20 to 30 millimeters of mercury more than when the radial pulse is cut off, meaning 20 to 30 millimeters of mercury 9, above where the radial pulse actually disappears. Yeah. For very young individuals, their radial pulse can be completely felt. If we cannot sense the radial pulse well, which is the case for many people, what do you do then? Look at this. They say in the guidelines that you should increase the pressure to 160 to 180 millimeters of mercury for the first time you measure. Now, what happens if we take the pressure much higher or lower than this amount? Again, it leads to both overestimation and underestimation. According to Principle 21, some people, when taking blood pressure, if the cuff's adhesive is weak, they hold it with their finger. Is this okay? Again, we apply additional pressure, and it also causes the pressure we measure to be inaccurate. The 22nd principle, what should the deflation speed be? It should be 2 to 3 millimeters of mercury per second. What happens if we do this quickly? And what if we do it very slowly? If we have very rapid deflation, we might not hear the first sound, so the patient's pressure and condition might be underestimated. If we have slow deflation, meaning we deflate the cuff very slowly, it becomes somewhat muffled. Why? Because it leads to venous congestion, so you don't hear the Korotkoff sounds well. Therefore, the speed should be, as I mentioned, 2 to 3 millimeters of mercury per second. Can we rely solely on the patient's pulse? You don't even have a sphygmomanometer device, and you haven't attached the cuff. Can we determine the patient's blood pressure based on the intensity of their pulse? Is this reliable or not? Meaning, can I just detect the radial artery pulse and say, for example, the patient's blood pressure is 120? No. Simply no. Well, as you said, everyone look here. So in order to accurately calculate blood pressure, we definitely need a stethoscope and the patient's pulse, meaning the patient's pulse is not a reliable source for us to determine blood pressure based on it. We can only estimate and show, and where is this estimation applicable? Only in emergency situations. They say the 60, 70, 80 rule for that. To detect the pulse, or carotid artery pulse, the patient's minimum blood pressure should be 60 mmHg. To check and detect the femoral artery pulse, the patient's minimum blood pressure is 70 mmHg. And to detect the radial artery pulse, the patient's minimum blood pressure is 80 mmHg. Can we, without using a stethoscope and just by using the pulse? So if we only use the pulse, we can only measure the systolic blood pressure, and measuring the diastolic blood pressure definitely requires a stethoscope. This is one point. The second point is whether the pressure we measure with the pulse is higher or lower compared to the pressure measured with the stethoscope. What? It's lower? Well done. Why? Because our sense of hearing is stronger than our sense of touch. That's why we hear the sound of the Korotkoff. But we haven't yet felt the pulse. The sphygmomanometers that take pressure from the wrist and those that have come with a finger option to measure pressure with a finger, are these reliable and accurate? Yeah, as I mentioned, usually these overestimate the pressure. Therefore, our preference is that the blood pressure device should definitely be an arm cuff type. The wrist type overestimates blood pressure, and their accuracy is also lower. Now, a question arises. If you measured the blood pressure and it was higher than normal, is one measurement enough? If the patient's blood pressure was high in the first session, we do not settle for just one measurement. We must take the patient's blood pressure twice, and there should be at least a 1-minute interval between them.